Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Upload Season 2, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's talk about everything at Lakeview, which I thought was kind of interesting. Obviously, Ingrid's throwing a party, and she's inviting a lot of people like David Choke, and who ended up showing up with kind of basically a sex robot that basically looks like his ex-wife, but she basically knows exactly everything that he wants and needs and stuff like that. And other people, we never actually got to find out who they were. Well, Ingrid says she met them in a complaint line, so we didn't really get to know those characters that well, but Nathan ended up inviting Luke and Yang, which I was like, yo, I like that him and Yang are still friends. Like, you know, he met Yang last season when he moved down to 2 gig, and now it's like, it's pretty dope. He ends up getting her like a day pass so she could be up there. Obviously, Luke is coming with Mildred, which Ingrid Super is like, oh, what he's doing with my grandmother should be illegal. It's like, no, but come on, they're dating. She's still like, no. She was actually hoping that David Choke and her grandmother being around each other enough would lead to potentially them getting together. Because for one, she doesn't like Luke, and knowing like all the things that he's doing to her grandmother, it's probably like messes with her head a little bit. But I also love the conversation between Luke and Nathan when it's like, man, everything that you're dealing with. He's like, Ingrid, no comment. And he's like, no, come on, Ingrid's not that bad. It's like, dude, wasn't she partly responsible for your murder? He's like, that was 96% her dad. And the real sad thing is him even going as far as saying like, oh, like, you know, how he deals with the whole Ingrid situation is, oh, I just pretend like it's a stage play of my life and that I am just, that she's the star of it. It was like, that's a sad coping mechanism with just like, but he's like, yeah, I'm you know, make a run at it and stuff like that. And then, you know, Luke tried to make him feel better. It's like, oh, maybe you'll find out that, you know, Ingrid, maybe she takes after her grandmother and she's like a freak or whatever in the bed and, you know, freaking sheets type of situation. And in that moment, Nathan's like, I've asked you this before, but what is wrong with you? He's like, just everything, man, just everything. You're like, oh, that sounded too real in that response. But, yeah, it was an interesting day at the party. The AIs weren't doing what they were supposed to. In fact, they actually screwed up, even though they're supposed to be on top of their game. But Ingrid set it up so that it's like two angels will serve as backups. And it, unfortunately, ended up being Alicia and her new temp, Tinsley, which Tinsley ended up having to use Nora's avatar, which caused all types of confusion for Nathan, and it's just kind of like, oh, right. You can tell, I think on some level, Ingrid knows, because she sees the way Nathan looked at Nora's avatar, but she's also like, oh, that's probably why Nathan looked at you like that, because he recognized you. He's like, yeah, you're the one that's like, yeah, but it's like, it comes out that it's the temp, and I love Ingrid just being who she is. I didn't ask for her whole life story, so... And so Nathan was a bit of a dick to her, but then he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, everything I was going through, like, me getting on you was like, that was more about me, not even about you. And she's like, oh, like, she really appreciated him giving her 5 stars, which is a little obviously reflective of, like, his interactions with Nora in season 1 a little bit. And, like, obviously she hugged him, and he kind of hugs her back, but it was more so, like, he wasn't hugging Tinsley, he was hugging Nora. But now the problem is, Tinsley is now crushing on Nathan. You're like, oh, God, that's all sorts of layers of complicated, because he's in a relationship with Ingrid. He's trying to make the best of it, but truth be told is he's still in love with Nora. But now here's someone using Nora's avatar because it's part of her job, but now she's kind of crushing on Nathan. So when the real Nora pops back into the picture, she's going to confuse like, oh, his feelings, I thought like there was something there, but in fact he was only liking me because of the avatar. Oh, that's going to get... And even Alicia being like, I don't see what's so appealing. He's not even that tall, which I love the whole thing that Nathan immediately had to be like, hey, you know, I'm 4 inches taller than Tom Cruise. And she's like, I know you are, honey. You've told me before. He's like, yeah, it's very important to me. I love that that's just like the run of the joke. Like, I feel kind of bad for Tom Cruise in that regard, because like every time people just like, oh yeah, Tom Cruise isn't as tall as people think he is. It's like, people probably make it seem like he's short. He's probably like very average height, you know, but regardless. I think it's just like, right, he's such a big time action star. You're like, oh, I got a one-up on. It's like if you just happen to be like, oh yeah, like I'm taller than The Rock. It's like, it's such a, oh, I'm taller by The Rock by like an inch or something like that. You know, it doesn't mean anything, but like just that male ego being like, yeah, I'm taller than this big time movie star. It's just all that really comes down to. I just think that's so interesting. But Tom Cruise always end up being the butt of the joke in that regard, just because of that element. I don't know if any other celebrity gets that as much as he does about the whole height situation. But regardless, at the dinner party, some really interesting conversations ended up coming up. One of the people that, you know, Ingrid brought to dinner was kind of saying, like, right, they need the separation of, like, oh, the poor and the rich. Saying, like, right, if you didn't have poor people like Yang there, how would you really know the good quality of life that you have? It's like, isn't that why she's here? And Yang's like, wait, what? And Nathan's like, no, that's not why she's here. It was about, because they had that whole conversation about, you know, the Ludds and what they do, which is interesting because obviously Nathan and him have no idea that Nora's kicking with the Ludds right now. But the attack on Freon, and because I love Nathan was like, oh, so who are you voting for the next election? Trying to like have any kind of conversation. So even if that's kind of sad when like the conversation is so dead, you want to move things in a more political direction. It's like that's usually the conversation you typically don't get involved in. But it turns out Ingrid kind of stays up to date, and even he's like, wait, you do? Because even he was surprised, which is surprising. Ingrid being who she is, why would she care about up to date? I guess it has stuff to do with her family plus everything she's associated with. I love that Nathan kind of completely ignored Luke, but Luke brought up some really good points, because the pastor who was it Pastor Rob, who's a Ludd? Apparently Ingrid's dad has ties to him. It's like, oh yeah, like he's not that great of a person. Like he's actually a hypocrite, saying like, yeah, him and my dad play tennis and he cheats. And so now Luke had kind of suggested like, oh, there's a connection there, so maybe there's something going on there. But Nathan was so focused on the Nora thing that he kind of ignored him. But you're like, oh, that's some pretty heavy like deducing and plot stuff that Luke probably like threw out there in the zeitgeist that like got completely overshadowed by, you know, Nathan being in his feelings, obviously, you know. But obviously it was also a conversation about all the different how Freon was kind of important. I also love that the professor just continues to be this background character. We know next to nothing to him, but he just kind of shows up and is kind of an arrogant dick. That's all that really comes down to. But that whole conversation about Freon, and it's kind of like, and David Choke is like, no, he actually agrees that like everyone throughout, you know, you struggle throughout life, like shouldn't be everyone have the opportunity, you know, very, you know, social class system element of like, yeah, shouldn't everyone, you know, that's, you know, obviously they package it in this very like sci-fi like comedy thing, but yeah, it's a commentary on social class. But shouldn't everyone be able to at least be able to make their own like afterlife and build it into whatever they want to? It shouldn't matter rich or poor. And he even brings up the fact is, hey, Nathan, you were working on something like that, which he was like, oh yeah, actually I was. And Luke was like, no, I mean, he doesn't remember. And Ingrid kind of joins into it. Yeah, he doesn't remember anything. His memories are pretty damaged. And he's like, yeah, I don't really remember much. I barely even remember my own name. And the David Choke's companion is like, your name is Nathan Brown. He's like, thanks. Which I also love that whole thing of like, there was a whole conversation about like delicacies and stuff like that, and he's just like she had said that David enjoys eating endangered species, and they're like, wait, really? He was like, yeah. I mean, what's the difference between eating like an octopus, which is smaller, which is smarter than a 6-year-old child? And then Luke had to correct it, be like, elaborate, be like, no, like, but you don't eat children, right? Because like that would be kind of wrong. And it's like, no, but he's like, I'm talking about the hypocrisy of it, that the animals that are smarter, like, you know, we still eat dolphins and gorillas and stuff like that. And it's like, no, people don't. Like, I guess unless you're rich and you have that type of money to get that type of. It was like, okay. I also love the back and forth between him and Mildred, because Mildred's like, "Oh, I'm from the '30s," and he's like, "Oh, I remember this particular show." He's like, "Oh, that's pretty racist," and she's like, "Yeah, things can't be funny like they used to be," and Nathan's like, "Not like that." Basically, it's just like, I just thought that was an interesting touch. I also thought it was interesting when she left too. She was like, "I'll be seeing you later," and he's like, no." I'm like, wait, does she imagine Nathan when she's having sex with Luke or something like that? That's what that almost implied to me. It's like, it's weird. I'm dating your granddaughter. This is weird. So that was kind of an interesting aspect to that whole situation. I also love the little background technology thing of basically they're making. Now I remember what the robot was called now really quickly. It was like, they were called like Preferas or something like that, because it's about your preferences. So yeah, but regardless, there was that baby thing that they're doing, which is kind of creepy, but it can also, once again, the technology can really lean together and show you what people will look like, babies of people, kind of like an advancement on that technology. So I thought that was kind of an interesting side of things. Other than that, we have everything in Lud where Mateo and Nora are getting closer and closer, but Pastor Rob has such an issue with Nora just being here because he feels like she's just freeloading. So many people have sacrificed so much, and it's like, what are you really doing? So Mateo introduces her to Boris, who is the actor that the because she's like, AI guy's like, "No, my name is Boris," and she's like, "I'm sorry, but who the fuck is Boris?" Like, "I'm the guy whose likeness they used for the AI. He only got paid like $1,200. You're like, "Geez, he probably does not get royalties on that. It's just like it was kind of a one-time gig, so he doesn't get paid in perpetuity." It's like, man, that's gotta suck. And he's like, "Yeah, another acting gig he had. What was it? Monera bread," and it's like, I've never heard that. He was like, it was banana bread for men, but they were like, it's problematic, so it got taken off the shelves. I love it. He was the face of it. But poor Boris. That was interesting. I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense. I mean, all the avatars that the angels use are just models of themselves. So yeah, then like everyone inside of Upload typically is based on what they look like. So I don't know why it just never crossed my mind to know that like, oh, the AI guy would be based on someone real. It just never crossed my mind, but I guess I should have. I just thought that was kind of interesting, like interesting little tidbits of lore. But they want to get Nora to basically create a avatar of using Boris, because if there's one more AI guy running around, no one's going to think too much of it, and that's how you infiltrate Lakeview. Because some of the Luds, the more extremists, hate all uploads, whereas people like Mateo more so hate the disparaging, the powerful and rich being able to like getting a better shot than those who are not as powerful and rich. So that's kind of where like his issue comes in, and going after Lakeview is kind of a middle ground, which obviously Nora has all complicated feelings there, because like, well, at least she has one friend there, Alicia, that works there, plus the whole Nathan of it all. So plus I mean, the only other client of hers we ever really got to know was Dylan, so we don't know how she feels about the rest of her clients. But yeah, there's that angle to it. So she has all kind of complicated feelings associated with Horizon. So going back there is going to be, she doesn't want to do anything to really hurt that, because she even talks about it. It's like, she doesn't think it's all bad, because even, once again, Mateo's like, I don't hate all technology, and she talks about, like, being able to bring the dead back to life is, something she really enjoys, that aspect of her life. And he's like, oh, how very Frankenstein of me. She's like, oh, I want to suck your blood. I was like, what? And even he says, that's Dracula. And she's like, just leave me to my work. I'm like, how do you confuse Dracula and Frankenstein? Come on, I can't let that go. It's like, well, not even just Frankenstein. Like, oh yeah. Because like, for one, it's like, Frankenstein's not even, it's not even like you confused Dracula with Frankenstein's monster. You confused Dracula with Frankenstein, the human who created Frankenstein's monster. So that's also the layer of the whole thing too, which I think is just interesting. But they were so satisfied with her work, the leadership actually wants her to go back to work, which is that's going to be a whole complicated lane of things for Nathan. I wonder, before she goes back, will she pick up her watch or will she forget it? So will she ever get Nathan's message? And even when she does, it's like there's the whole Mateo and her thing. And there's, by the time she gets back, he's going to be with Ingrid. Well, because she's going back to work, but she's not going to be going back as herself. She's probably going to go back as like had to get a new avatar because the temp is working there currently. Well, we know that they were going to use the AI guy, well, Boris, as an inside. So the question is, like, is Nora... That's where I thought Nora was going to overhear some of the stuff with Nathan when she's pretending to be the AI guy. I thought that's what it is. But it sounds like they legitimately want her to go back to work and be undercover. But it's like, right, Lud will protect you and stuff. Even her dad's not... I guess her dad really doesn't have much say. It's like, right, we made this choice here, so we kind of have to... help out when they want us to, so you can't really say no under the circumstances. I guess is kind of how it is. And even Mateo, because she's like, wait, do you want me to do this? He's like, yeah, it doesn't matter what I want. This is about the greater cause. This is for the movement. So it's like, okay, I kind of come second fiddle to that. Her dad more so is happy. He's like, oh, you're actually going for someone that's human, so he's happy about that. And Nora is going to be working with Agent Cheeto. I was like, oh, who's it going to be? Is it someone we're going to know? Never did it cross my mind to think, oh, it's going to be freaking Ivan. At no point did I think it was going to be him. And it's just like, wow. So that's definitely interesting. Never would have saw him as the double agent type, or just the undercover type. But yeah, interesting developments. So I'm really curious to see how this ultimately all ends up playing out going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.